What's going on? Boys, arm yourselves, and I'll say that again, arm yourselves, life stuff. I'm floating at the moment, and will try to come up with something comprehensible. I tend to stay out of politics because unless something affects me directly, which is almost never, there is no point in paying attention to it. Anything important you have no say over. And once you find out what happened, if you find out what happened, it's at the point nothing can be done. Not that anything could have been done if you had known about it, but all it serves to do is waste your time, unbalance you, make you think and act unevenly, and remind you of things you already know about your state and about people. You are much better off investing your money in ammunition and your time in spiritual pursuits, including the scientific if that's your game, than you are investing any amount of money or time in fucking politics. But the public reaction to recent events necessitated my paying attention. If for no other reasons than better to blend in and to sow mistrust rightfully. Not that that's going to do anything, and not that trying to convince people to arm themselves is going to do me any favors. If anything, it's going to harm me in the long run if anybody does listen to me. But I needed to read up, and of course, everything is as fishy as you would expect it to be. And we use they as a grouping often on this channel. And it's important to remember that they, in this instance, is not singular. They is very plural. You have the first layer, textbook glow in the dark glow in the dark bullshit shenanigans. That was obvious the moment it happened, and in the days following, you get all of the textbook, the first, just the fact that it happened the way it happened. You have the bones, you have the glowing bones. The days following, you get, it's like the periodic table. We didn't know that certain elements existed, but we were pretty sure they were there. Days following, you get that glowing meat, those glowing elements. You already knew they were there. I'm more suspicious of the advanced glowing, right? Because we've reached a point societally, even the commonest dummy is aware of low-level glowing. Jimbo dipshit's assumption now is that something fucky-wucky was going on. Ergo, you need to be thinking about the things that are even less obvious, even more absurd, outlandish. One of the things Slim said to me that I thought was very good about the United States population when Kennedy got capped was we were a naive people. And it's taken all these years to shed that naivete. But the thing is, I don't think we have shed it. Our general suspicion might have increased a few notches, but these people, if you can call them people, are inhumanly tricky. And they're cruel and sarcastic. To get even the faintest idea of what might be going on, you need to think contrary to your society's assumptions. Meaning, if John Dipshit assumes the CIA is involved, or there is some glowy fuckery happening, in the sense, one of the theys, is persecuting a powerful outsider, then you need to think beyond that on a few levels. Trying to understand psyops feels like interpreting signs from cast stones. It's esoteric, and I hate that word. It's opaque. It's like trying to interpret religion or interpret events in a religious way. This first level should have been obvious from the very beginning because it is always the case, but this level gets more solid as time goes on. Got very solid for me recently. And that's the level Trump is not an outsider. And that should be a no shit thing. But again, for some reason, it isn't. It's like they're trying to use Johnny Dipshit's suspicion to create a messianic figure. And I mean that literally, down to the time recent events happened and the religious significance one might interpret from that time, if one were so inclined. Human beings make mistakes. The CIA doesn't, but we'll get into that. So on the first level, if Trump is one of them, or is one of the thems competing in the themosphere, what is he being propped up for? Right? Because it's not just power. Or rather, I should say control. Because Americans are really stupid and really weak. As long as we have television and earn... Actually, we don't need to earn enough money to put anything away. As long as we have luxuries and some kind of illusion to cling on to and organize our lives around, which is further into the video, we'll get into that, we aren't going to do anything. We don't have the willpower to stand up for ourselves. It's never going to happen. They don't need to prop someone up to control us. They don't even need to play to us, really, to control us. So, what purpose does turning Trump into the victim messiah bullet dodger serve? Literally bullet dodger now. Is it a push to formalize the control they have been informally wielding for decades? People around me were cheering about that immunity thing because that trial was a sham, but formalizing that sort of immunity is not how you deal with that. I mean, we weren't doing anything about the control our state wields over us, the awful shit they get away with. But now, if we wanted to try, it's going to be so much harder. That isn't something to celebrate. So are they turning him into a blueprint for future presidents, or a different form of president? Someone who can get away with shit without needing to be sneaky. Not that we had the willpower or the means to do anything about it in the first place. And this most recent event Fishy that the guy got to shoot, fishier to me that he missed. The way he missed, where he missed. You're telling me all these hyper fishy steps happen, and everyone is acknowledging them as fishy, surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, but then he misses by that close, hits him actually, and that isn't what you find fishy. There is a ziggurat of deception being built here, and you think the miss was not part of it. So what does it mean that he didn't kill him, but he hit him in his ear? What does that do? Well, firstly, it cements, and I think in a way stagnates, the level of suspicion we're on. Because it is all so painstakingly textbook. And we're finding out about all this so quickly. It's like sleight of hand, but there's a word I'm missing, but in a confusing, tricky, and clever way. It's like the CIA is stating openly, we are up to something, to disguise whatever it is they're up to. And because our basic assumptions, our basic societal assumption is to look for this sort of textbook, we think we have it because they gave it to us. They really gave it to us. So we have found what we have been conditioned to look for, and then we stop looking. It's playing on pattern recognition, and it ironically benefits from the outlandishness of all this. Because not that long ago, if someone said the CIA was involved in a situation like this, you would get called a conspiracy theorist. Now it is the basic assumption. So in that, it's not taboo anymore. But the fact it was taboo not that long ago sells the lie better. So it looks like this victim messiah got tried by the CIA and survived. I don't know what's going on this level, but it feels like they're building toward a push and distracting from something really outlandish that we should be paying attention to. Because if your betters throw the Johnny Dipshit bait out and Johnny Dipshit bites, something is happening. Something is always happening, but if a sleight of hand maneuver is required, then it's probably something big. Because again, they don't need to do this normally. And then the second level and beyond is where I get confused and probably where we'll go off track completely. I have no idea how we're going to fit all these things together, but we're going to try. Bear with me. I think we as a species are not in the end times. I don't think we are moving toward some big game-ending event. I've been thinking a lot about controls lately. How many of them there are, how effective they are, and the way our entire planet, our entire species, all of our history in the past and in the future history that will be, could be, probably is, just one little corner of space and time. Whatever is happening is playing itself out. Or in other words, whatever happens to us doesn't really matter because it is just one place and one time this same bullshit is happening. There might not even be anything won or lost. If you audit your life, you come to realize you are an utterly controlled being. you don't really have a say in anything. You chose almost nothing, if anything. You didn't invent yourself. You didn't choose what you would incarnate into. You didn't choose what organs you would have where you were born. You didn't invent the language you use to structure your concepts, the things you think you're using to make decisions, your own decisions, rather. And you don't make your decisions by your choice. You're led into thinking you chose them by so many things you have no say in. You don't even have a say in how you react to certain information. You're like a liquid flowing through series of conditions. And it makes you feel like your consciousness or your awareness or your sentience, whatever you want to call it, is not a will and instead an organ that feels conditions. And I bring this up not because I think, well, it's one of these things that is a mixture of I don't think this is what's going on, but it's another one of these reasonable perspectives that whether or not you think it's going on, it makes sense. The math checks out. And you need to collect as many of these as you can. Like the entire chaos thing. Gathering up perspectives, views from different peaks that check out, helps you get closer to figuring anything out, if you can figure anything out, which we might get to in this video. The point of this most recent perspective is to illustrate just how many controls are active in your life at any given time. I think we misfile basic assumptions into the facts category, whether or not they are facts, when we should be at least considering them as controls, or paying attention to the controlling influence they have over us. Just by either there being facts or our perceiving them as facts. And this is important because belief is power. And I don't think that's even just in a material sense. People stand to gain things or more from belief than we will ever know. And people need things to believe in. I'm starting to view the intersection of concepts and consistency as belief and as nutrition. Because for someone to believe something, they need to recognize it as something to recognize, and it needs to be consistent enough they can latch on to it. And not perfectly consistent, because we are so desperate for belief, we'll fill in some holes, but that consistency needs to be there, and we need to have a mind net around it. And we need belief like nutrition, because you'll notice if people lose too many beliefs, or in other words, too many of their concepts and consistencies either intertwine or get vaporized, they die. Or they go into a different dimension, or their consciousness goes into a different dimension. They lose their minds. We need, or someone or something needs us to need, the structure of belief. I think that's one of the reasons so many people teach mindfulness and why so many people like it. It is a retreat into simpler, solider belief. You know what breathing is, and if you're alive, it's consistent because you're going to be doing it. You retreat into a basic, consistent concept in an attempt to shield your mind from the irrationality of existence. And I don't think that's something we're ever going to escape, at least in our current states, which we might get to. But that sustenential need for belief is a vector by which people can control you. You need something to believe, like you need food and water. So whenever an event interrupts the beliefs you have come to rely on, or if your beliefs just need to be changed enough time has passed, like oil in a car, or a filter or something, a reality irrationality filter, brain protector, normality anchor protector filter, it's much easier to sell you a belief. And once you have bought in, it's like a subscription. You're paying them not just with money or time, but probably some spiritual resource the entire time you're in it. Wrapping back to the recent events example, what belief are they trying to sell you on now? Again, it's like they're trying to get you hooked on one form of distrust so you don't pay attention to other forms of distrust you should have instead. But that feels like it hardly even matters. The point is, you need something to believe, and you hate feeling uncomfortable, you hate feeling stupid, you hate feeling powerless, you hate feeling confused, you hate feeling lost. I don't think it's a matter of what they're up to. I'm beginning to think what they're up to is something we're never going to understand. The same way, we're probably never going to understand the purpose we serve if we're following righteousness. It is a huge game whose players and objectives and rules, for the most part, we don't see. And I'm beginning to think if we think we can see it, or if someone tells you they can see it in any hard, concrete way, they're lying, and that's another salesman tactic. The price being your soul. So what can we do about this? Well, it's basically the same things we always do, the same things we always talk about, but stated with iterations. Patch notes. Always with patch notes. I think you need, organic belief. And what is organic belief? I think it is concept and consistency, the most consistent, self-evident, self-arising. Right? I don't think mindfulness is going to help someone with schizophrenia and synesthesia. Everything down to your senses can change or be falsified. But the beautiful thing about that is, what do you think a schizophrenic person with synesthesia is still going to feel when they are tasting breathing? Pain, terror, and confusion. I think those feelings are the holy trinity upholding what we think is our existence, or the way we experience, period. You don't know It hurts. You're scared. You're going to spend your entire life floundering between a few different, variably consistent concepts, variably applicable beliefs, trying to avoid those three pillars. Ironically, because they are the most consistent beliefs, you always hurt, you're always scared, and above all others, you always don't really know. That's why you cling to beliefs so hard. And we've talked about accepting these sorts of things before. Letting yourself hurt, letting yourself fear, letting yourself not know. Not to alleviate or to escape them because you can't and never will, but more because they are instructive. If you don't fight them, you learn from them. As much as anything can be learned. But I'm realizing they also serve a defensive purpose. If you are someone who is not lusting for result, not trying to escape pain because you know you can't, not trying to escape fear because you know you can't, not trying to escape confusion or not trying to know because you know go far enough down, you can't. What can a demon person offer you? What can they trick you with? If you're someone who has accepted that any belief that makes things make sense to you, that makes you feel good, that gives you hope, that makes you calm, that makes you think everything is going to be okay, is a lie, is deception, is designed to get you away from the most fundamental aspects of your existence, as much as you can accept that anyway, I think we're designed never really to be able to accept that in full. But if you're someone who is at least aware of that and trying to accustom yourself to it, what can they do to make you forfeit your soul for comfort? Are they going to force you? Oh, you mean they're going to make you feel pain, fear, and confusion? I think there's something in manipulating people into believing something that is greater than forcing them to believe it. Because that's... I do believe you can force people to believe something, but I think the sort of belief that comes from their thinking they're choosing it is more powerful than any sort of enforced belief, even if you achieve like a Big Brother level of enforced belief. The point in all this is you are engineered to be vulnerable to manipulation. You're on a fragile, resource-starved, leaking vessel with no map on a doomed voyage. You are the exact sort of person, engineered to be the exact sort of person, who would sell their soul to a demon to escape it in any way. Your job, I think, if you want to serve your God, I think, or at least maintain ownership over your own soul, if that's even possible, if you even have a soul, I think, is to accept the utter futility and hopelessness and irrationality of your situation as much as you can. Because it kind of feels like almost like a Jacob's Ladder situation. Your engineered, built-in vulnerabilities, your pain, your fear, your confusion, can protect you if you don't do what you're engineered to do, which is to deny them. If you instead accept them as much as you can, they will protect your soul as much as your soul can be protected. And they're hard to accept because the whole point of your being the way you are is so you always have things to run away from, and thereby toward any number of lose your soul ass beliefs. But you really are hard to manipulate, if not force, when you accept them as much as you can. And accepting them it feels so unnatural. Confusion, especially. How do you manipulate someone into believing something when that person has accepted not knowing? How do you sell someone a concept when concepts are increasingly futile to them? Maybe there's something to believe in, maybe there isn't something to believe in. You don't know, it doesn't matter. You're here to do whatever it is you're here to do because you're here to do it until it's over. How do you divert someone from that course without forcing them anyway? How do you make them choose to forfeit their soul? And this gets back into the evil, bad, good thing. I'm beginning to view. I don't think your soul has anything to do with good or evil necessarily. Because unless you're a psychopath, and I think actual psychopaths are. We've talked about them before, just a different species with higher starting stats but lower skill caps. Doing good and doing evil require a similar amount of effort. You'll be bad all day long because bad is what you are, but to do good or to do evil requires an additional soul commitment. And I'm finding good done well and evil done well both feel about the same. When you fight to uphold one of your principles and to succeed, and when you fight to violate another one of your principles and to succeed, it's like the same amount of soul dopamine gets released, which makes me think damnation has way more to do with what you believe and how you were made to believe it. I think if you have a soul and you were convinced to subscribe to someone else's doctrine and to do their schoolwork because you are afraid and confused and in pain, then that's grounds for damnation if there is damnation. Rambling now, but to summarize, recent events have made us reflect on the fact you are engineered to be a belief crop, and if you want not to be harvested by other people, by malevolent entities, then you need to accept that it hurts, that you're scared, and that you don't know. And once you have accepted those things, which you're never going to do 100%, I think that is a constant battle, as well it should be. Your soul is a little bit more protected, and you are better able to do whatever it is you are here to do. For purposes you'll never understand, for outcomes you'll never enjoy, you're never going to know, you're never going to enjoy, you're never going to change anything, you're never going to be saved. But if you want to do your job, you can do it by accepting the vulnerabilities that would otherwise make you vulnerable to these sorts of manipulations. Or maybe just so you don't get harvested by soul eaters or some shit. And I think politics is so pervasive and intense and ridiculous because for most people, for fucking Hylics, that's enough. But there are specialist, glow-in-the-dark squidfish people who are gunning for your soul specifically. And don't let them have it unless you want to let them have it. I'm not your dad. You do whatever you want. 2 new sets of magic words before we go. I'll try to put together a sigil, but these are for the worst case scenario. You got glowed, the spiritual swan song, God's Vendetta. Paradeath, non-Oddshawl. Paradeath, non-Oddshawl. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.